Hi, I'm Caitlin Pearson, evening anchor at 12 News WBNG, and our news station has the honor of being the media team for the Twin Tiers Honor Flight. The Twin Tiers Honor Flight is part of the National Honor Flight organization. For us, that entails the southern tier of New York and then the northern tier of Pennsylvania. So what they do is they take veterans from those areas and bring them to our nation's capital, so these veterans can see the very memorials and monuments erected in their honor. And then a big part of it too is that when they come back to their home, they get a huge welcome celebration that for many veterans they didn't have when they returned from service initially.
I was part of Mission 18, and it was actually really special to me because I got to go on the trip with all of these veterans. I think there was just over 40 of them, and one of them was my grandpa. He's a Vietnam veteran. He served right out of high school, and I've never really heard his full story. I've heard bits and pieces of it. But while we were on this trip, I got to see and hear more about it. From what I've heard, Vietnam veterans did not have a fantastic experience coming back. They were kind of shunned, nobody talked about it, and a majority of the veterans on our trip were Vietnam veterans. What was special about this was that he was with a group of veterans who all shared the same experience as him, and they were honored. They were honored in ways that they didn't get when they returned back from Vietnam, being in tears as he received his Vietnam Veterans pin. It was something that they didn't get when they got home. The emotions, the memories, the stories, it's never going to be the same for one person.
This past fall, I got to be part of a bus trip, and that bus trip was particularly significant for the Twin Tiers Honor Flight because it was the first all-female veteran honor flight that the Twin Tiers Honor Flight had taken part of, and they wanted their media crew to be all-female as well. Something really special happened. We found out when we got to DC that about 6-7 women who were all in the same unit when they served were all there together, and they had no idea that that was going to happen. A lot of these women hadn't seen each other in decades, and they were able to visit the memorials and monuments in DC together and talk about stories that they had had when they were serving, and seeing them laugh together and even cry together was something really special that I was able to capture in speaking with all of them. One of the women, well, actually when we were on our way down to DC, she found out that her husband had passed away. There was a lot of questions of whether she was going to be, sent home, if a family member was going to try to pick her up, but she said no. She said, my husband wanted me to go on this trip because he was so proud of me and my service, and I know that he would want me to stay and do this. And that was very emotional, and being able to just be with her and give her a hug and tell her that we were all there for her, and being able to be with her fellow veterans, I think made that healing process definitely something she could handle.
Yeah, I come from a family of veterans and people who have served in the armed forces, and it's something that's just it's something different. They leave for so long and you don't get to see them and they don't get to come back. And I can't even imagine what it was like for my grandpa who left and tried to write letters, but when he came back, he can't even talk about it. My brother can talk about it, my cousins can talk about it, my little brother will be able to talk about it, but my grandpa was so not able to talk about it.
And something that each honor flight has the pleasure of participating in is a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Now, this is something that different veterans who are on the trip are picked to take part in. They get to walk the steps with those soldiers that protect the tomb, and they get to lay a wreath that represents the southern tier. This is something for the women who take part in it is extremely emotional. On the all-female honor flight, I got to speak with one of the women who was involved, who was actually a Korean War veteran after, and she looked at me and held my hand and said, Caitlin, that's truly the most remarkable thing that I've ever been a part of and something that I will never forget. And for her, it was something that she hadn't talked a lot about her service. It was just something she did. And this was the first time she really had sat down and talked to someone about the things that she had accomplished and what her service meant to her.
Being able to take as many veterans from our area as possible to Washington, D.C., to honor them, to be able to have them share their stories. I don't think there's anything like it.
A lot of the women that I talked to said no one had ever really asked them. And being able to be that person that said, I'm listening, I want to tell your story matters, your story is important, and share that with our viewing audience is something that I find extremely valuable and something that I won't forget.